Hello, hi Fiona.
Hi, Kuntong. How are you doing?
I'm very good. How are you?
Great today. Happy to be speaking with you.
Yeah, yeah. First of all, thank you so much for coming to the Redefine tomorrow, 2025. So for all the audience, so my name is Kawiwut Tempuapat. I'm CEO of SCB 10X, and today I have a pleasure to introduce and be a moderator in this session with Fiona Murray, a managing director of APAC of Ripple. So very welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'm really excited to be speaking with you and to your audience as well.
All right. Maybe let's get started. Maybe we talk about the adoption. So we are going to talk about the topics of global payments or Ripple's real world adoption. So I would love to hear more about the adoption. So Fiona, you've been at Ripple for over 5 years, from London leading APAC operation. What does the real world adoption actually look like today for Ripple's payment solution, and how has that evolved since you first joined the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually been about just over 7 years that I've been with Ripple. And in that time, we've moved from being a very ambitious payment company, exploring the use of digital assets in cross-border payments, to now we're a one-stop shop for digital asset infrastructure. And what that means is we have cornerstones of payments, of digital asset custody, of tokenization, of stablecoins. So really, if you're entering the space of moving value or interacting with digital assets, we have you covered. And so your question of what does real world adoption look like for us is a really fantastic one. It's one that we've been thinking about all along. And that adoption is really about solving real problems that exist in the world and that exist in financial services. So if I just take a step back and look at what we've achieved in that time, Ripple Payments, Ripple as an organization with one-stop shop infrastructure is stronger than it's ever been. So on the payment side, we've processed over 70 billion US dollars worth of payments. Much of that is settled through XRP or stable coins or fiat currency as well. And on the custody side, we service some of the world's largest custodian banks like HSBC, BBVA, SocGen Forge, as they look to keep digital assets safe for their customers who are tokenizing real world assets themselves. And so, all of this speaks to adoption and utility are really what we're in the game for. I'll mention one last thing, and that's we also this year announced the acquisition of Hidden Road. Hidden Road is a crypto and traditional prime brokerage, and this marks, the acquisition is about 1.25 billion US dollars. So we're really excited about one of the largest deals in the digital asset space, and that will really focus on bringing liquidity to the market and new use cases so that we can really move things forward for real world adoption.
So, the APAC region is experiencing explosive growth right now in the digital payments, and with the real-time payment volumes reach 2.4 trillion US dollar by 2025. How's Ripple position yourself to capture these opportunities? And what makes APAC different from other markets?
Yeah, APAC is home for me. So I love talking about our region and I love talking about the innovation here. I really think that what makes APAC stand out is that innovation. The level of entrepreneurship that's in our region is, it's in our blood. So it's fantastic to see some of the innovation. I completely agree with you when it comes to digital payments. You see some of I don't know that it's even called innovation anymore. It's just adopted as standard. So we have QR payments, we have digital wallets, we have cross-border government and interbank collaboration. So it's amazing to me, though it feels normal, that I can go to Bangkok and I can use my Singapore banking app to pay for the MRT. These are not standard in most of the world. So that's the foundation layer that we have: innovation and ease of use for the average user, which is an amazing platform to stand on. If I look at the other side of why is all of this possible, Most of the time, it's because we have very forward-thinking regulators in our region, and this has really impacted Ripple and the work that my team does. So we chose to be based in Singapore because we saw a very clear regulatory framework for both payments and for digital assets. And in 2023, we became licensed by MAS, who've been a wonderful partner for the industry in setting clear foundational rules and structure so that we can keep ourselves and really the industry safe with trusted partners to operate with. So I think those are really what set APAC apart. And you can see that in practice because when it comes to Ripple, on the payment side, again, many of our payments settle through digital assets. Uh, what we found is that the growth in APAC has been unparalleled. So, despite running a global payments network, being headquartered in San Francisco in the US, around 50% of our global payments volume is attributed to APAC. And again, that's just an example of that innovation and that foundation of a strong regulatory framework coming together.
Yeah, I tend to agree because I think sitting here in Thailand, SCB, I think we're one of the big customers for Ripple, like since like 7 years ago, I think. And then, now actually here in the US. And I think digital payment in APAC is very big right now. So yeah, agree. And so you mentioned that the bulk of innovation in Ripple's business was happening in Singapore, in Thailand, not in the US. Like, can you walk us through some of the specific partnerships or implementation that kind of demonstrate this innovation advantage in Asia?
Yeah, absolutely. So, on top of that 50% volume that we're seeing through APAC in our global payment network, I think the innovation is really demonstrated through some of the use cases that we're pioneering out here, building and are actually live. So I'll take stablecoin as an example. Ripple launched RLUSD at the end of last year, and that was in response to a lot of the market call that we see. So, we have been asked to build out collections capability for stablecoins so that payments companies and enterprises can reach new markets and can reach new merchants so that they can gain global access to supply chains. And I'll give you a real world example. We're working with a trading company based in Hong Kong, and they came to us and they said, "We have this challenge. We're operating, we sell services around the world, and we see that LATAM is a large market. Brazil is a very, very large market for us. But for some reason, the neighboring countries don't have the same demand, or we're not processing anything for the neighboring countries." And so when we looked into that problem statement together with them, we found that the neighboring countries, several of them had demand for their goods. However, they couldn't pay them. And this is something that happened last year, not decades ago. So in today's system, there are still enterprises, there are still financial institutions that have poor access to global financial systems and currencies and trade currencies. And so what we did together was we explored, okay, if they have access to US dollar stablecoin, would you accept that? And actually, Ripple stepped in to provide that bridge of accepting the US dollar-backed stablecoin on behalf of our trading company and running that conversion into US dollars so that they could pay their suppliers downstream across Asia Pacific. And that kind of use case, it's real, it's live, it helps to bridge countries so that they're closer together and really benefit organizations as well as individuals to reach, the whole world, because paying is the first step to being able to access services or goods in other jurisdictions. I'll mention as well on the custody side that we see this innovation taking place in real time. So several of our clients are the world's largest custodians, as I mentioned. Many of them are moving into providing digital asset custody for tokenization. So tokenization of money market funds, of gold, of bonds, and there's so many benefits that come with that. Tokenization is one example. That's what HSBC is doing and building on our platform. There's BDAX in Korea. BDAX is a crypto native custodian, so they're there and they're ready to really build out this institutional adoption and provide safe spaces for institutions to move into tokenization or into interacting with digital assets. The other example here in our region is DBS. DBS were a pioneer in their space. You know, Singapore's largest bank, one of the largest banks in Southeast Asia, and they launched a digital asset exchange. So their customers, their institutional customers, can buy and hold crypto with them, and these are all great examples of what we see in our region.
Cool. So I think I want to expand a little bit more on the stable coin. So the recent launch of the Ripple stable coin, backed by the USD, is a significant expansion beyond just XRP. Can you talk a bit about the rationale behind it, and then how that complement the existing infrastructure, and what's that mean for adoption in APAC?
Yeah, absolutely. When we looked at our interaction with institutions and regulated entities, we often adapt our strategy to the demand that we see and to what the requests that we get in from our institutional client base. And RLUSD, our US dollar-backed stablecoin, is no exception to that. So we launched RLUSD at the end of last year. We have now surpassed $300 million of market cap. So we're pretty happy with the speed of adoption and the growth that we're seeing. We launched RLUSD out of a New York trust company charter that gives us bank grade oversight, and really that speaks to, we have a compliance first mindset as an organization, as many of the regulated financial institutions that we work with have as well. So we're able to have that trust base and really, launch products and services from the highest test of regulatory oversight. RLUSD is recently been listed on many global exchanges, including Kraken and Gemini, Bitget in Asia Pacific, and that response was particularly to the use cases and the demand that we see in institutions. So we have a clear use case in payments. I mentioned over $70 billion of flows that we service through our global payment network. We are already starting to use RLUSD in our own payment network. We see the use case of using stablecoin as a store of value. Again, that use case that I mentioned in Hong Kong, a lot of those other countries and enterprises in other countries want access to a better store of value than what they have available to them traditionally. And then finally, one last use case that I'm really excited about, like why we launched RLUSD, is this whole world of collateral. And with our acquisition of Hidden Road last year cleared over $3 trillion. They're going to be using RLUSD for collateral in lending. And this is another game-changing step forward for the industry. So we're really excited about what's to come.
Yeah. We are very excited for the use case and the adoption of the RLUSD. I think our theme for the summit is building through cycles. You know that we've been through many cycles and very look up to Ripples. You've been navigating this multiple crypto market cycles, regulatory uncertainties, and now we're seeing a renewed institutional interest. And what are some of the framework and the discussion internally, like how are you building a sustainable business through these volatile periods?
Yeah, I have seen a lot of change over the last 7 years. We have had ups and downs. The market has had ups and downs, and one word that really comes to mind when building a sustainable business in such a fast-moving environment is resilience. I think that's probably very very common across the financial sector that has been impacted by many external shocks recently. Resilience is top of mind, and the way that we stay resilient at Ripple is to focus on utility. So really, as we started talking about at the top of our session, how can we build to solve real world problems? And in our case, does blockchain help us if it does, that's what we lean into. So that utility is what helps us build for the institutions that we work with, because I mentioned that they need trust as a foundation. And that trust comes with solving problems, focusing on bringing efficiencies and doing things differently to open up new opportunities for them. You know, when we were sued by the SEC for allegedly providing unregistered securities, it was a very big blow to us, and it shook the whole industry. And what we did was, you know, we came together as a team. We knew that we were on the right side of history, and we prepared to fight. We prepared to fight because we knew that the institutions that we work with were calling for our technology. They were calling for trusted counterparties in this space, and that it was up to us together to provide access to this new digital asset class that consumers, that institutions were calling for. And so, you know, that resilience really took us through that period of time. That focus on utility helped keep our strength up, and to operate together as a team. And luckily for us, you know, it wasn't, not all of us are in the US, as I'm based here in Singapore. We had like-minded, forward-thinking regulators to rely on outside of the US, and institutions that were pioneers in this space that could see that the world would change. And so we stuck with that faith, and are happy to be standing here today with you.
Yeah, the resilience very important. I mean, congrats for that, right? And on XRP, XRP has been experienced a lot of price movements so far, reaching very high, above $3 in early 2025, before the correction. And how do you balance the excitement of the token itself and, the price appreciation and also between that and, on the utility and, balance that between that and the utility and the long-term adoption?
Yeah, that's a question that we get asked about a lot, but it's one that I have to say internally doesn't get much focus, and that's because number one for us is utility. So the market for crypto is very unstable, and often, you know, we're surprised by which way the market moves, or some of the volatility, because we don't have an answer or a reason behind it. So what we do as an organization is yeah, we have some, you know, personal interest in watching this space, and, you know, tracking the price of XRP, of Bitcoin, of Ethereum. However, what we do as an organization is really focus on what are the use cases of building on the XRP ledger, what are the use cases of using digital assets like XRP, like RLUSD in payment infrastructure, what are the capabilities or the transformation that can come when you adopt digital assets. And that means that we're pretty arm's length from any of the movement or volatility in the crypto world, because we're laser focused on utility for the institutions that we work with.
Yeah, definitely focusing on the use case and the utilities are something that Ripple's been doing. And but you know what? Actually, I think working at the corporates, I think the corporates get scared very easy with the market volatilities, right? How do you maintain momentum with your enterprise partnership? What are some of the strategies that work best? When you working with the traditional financial institutions when the market kind of negative.
Yeah, luckily things have moved on quite a lot. So in the time that I've been at Ripple, you know, the starting point was you couldn't talk about digital assets openly. You couldn't talk about crypto. And that's, some of that is because the regulatory landscape hadn't caught up to, you know, some of the thinking and the ideas that we had. Now, you know, with the launch of DDEX by DBS, the world is a very different place. Again, SocGen, HSBC, there's a whole range of very, very large conservative organizations whose job is risk management, who are moving in this space that makes our life much easier. However, you know, that focus on education, on working in partnership with policymakers and with regulated institutions is what we continue to do, and it is step by step, and sometimes it can feel very slow. But what we've been able to do is marry, crypto natives who are less regulated, who are maybe a VASP versus a bank. There are different regimes out there that have different levels of risk tolerance, and so we get to work with both ends of the spectrum, which frankly helps us with the motivation and to keep going, because you can see those milestones, and then when one of the big guys steps in, you have very significant transformation. But it's everyone working together, moving forward, that helps us with that dialogue, that helps us show regulators that there's a safe way to operate. And really, it's not just us anymore. There's so many other organizations that are calling for further regulation, for regulatory frameworks that we can operate in, and that all keeps us going. So we're on the right path.
Yeah, definitely on the right path, right? And competition right now is, I think, it's intensifying, with the CBDCs and other, payment solution like USDC, USDT. How do you position Ripple's solution going forward, when clients have much more alternative in terms of their solution payment?
Yeah, when I look at the options that are available, I see that as a positive reinforcement of our strategy. So the fact that there are other stablecoins out there, the fact that there are now more payment companies that are addressing that bridging of digital assets and fiat currency, all of this is reinforcing that there's demand for what we're doing, and that's a great space to be in. If you look at things from a cross-border payments perspective, which is how we started, the world looks very different. Interoperability is actually something that matters a lot to cross-border payments. That example that we were talking about, of being able to pay in Bangkok with my Singapore dollars, with my Singapore funds, with my Singapore app. That's interoperability. That serves the customer, and it embraces different networks, different currencies. And when I look across the digital asset space, that's what we're building. So we want to be able to have a multi-chain world. When we launched RLUSD, our stablecoin, we chose to do so on both the XRP ledger and on Ethereum, because there is an element of offering choice and interoperability when it comes to actual adoption and usage. Similarly, when we look across the custody solution that we have, we are enabling tokenization across multiple chains. We're enabling custody of digital assets, whether they're tokenized real world assets or whether they're crypto assets like Bitcoin. And and that all fits together because we're building that foundation for financial market infrastructure. So we need to have interoperability and choice for our consumers.
Yeah, SCB10X now, we are very deeply involved in the AI development, and there are so many things happening around blockchain and AI. How do you envision AI enhancing cross-border payments in the futures? You see that kind of, AI in the blockchain-based systems?
Yeah, I think there are some interesting parallels in that it's a nascent technology. There we can all speculate on which way the world is going to go, and what will happen. What the reaction from regulators will be as the technology develops. What I'll say is I'm excited to see some aspects of AI around efficiency improvements, around agentic AI to help individuals and organizations navigate the system. I think there's a lot that remains to be seen and proven, and I'm sure we'll be seeing some interesting things come from the SCB group as well.
Yeah. I see there are a news around potential approval of XRP ETFs and the growing institutional interest. What infrastructure development are most critical for this to supporting next wave of this adoption?
Yeah, huge amount of activity in this space. So over the last few weeks alone, we've seen XRP futures ETFs go live on CME. In fact, it was Hidden Road that cleared the very first trade there. So we're proud parents on that front, and also live on Nasdaq on the volatility shares. So some really big players in this space. Right now, we are pending spot and futures ETF applications in the US from Franklin Templeton, from Grayscale, and from many others of that kind. Um, Other XRP ETFs that exist today and are seeing traction and volume growing on them are Hashkey in APAC, Hashdex in Brazil, Virtune in the Nordics. So, you know, really a lot of activity, and we're really excited to see that activity. What it tells us about demand is probably more interesting than what it tells us about infrastructure. It says to us that institutional investors want to have that access to a diverse set of digital assets, assets in general, and to be able to include uh, digital assets in their portfolio. And now what we're seeing is, particularly with the movement in the US, they have the regulatory clarity to do so. So as these really large guys move into this space, it opens up whole new markets to us. So that's something that we're keen to promote and to continue to see.
Yeah, as someone who's built the bridge between the traditional finance and the Web3, what's your advice for other companies, startup, trying to navigate this, trying to sell crypto solutions to traditional finance, as you mentioned? What are some of the challenges that you face and how you overcome all of those? Any advice to share with the startup?
Yeah, absolutely. So my advice would be really to start with what problems are there and what can we solve. And some of it is going to be a journey. You won't have answers to everything day one, but really focusing on, where can we improve the organization's lives, individuals' lives? How can we bring in technology to solve actual problems rather than technology for technology's sake? We see a fair amount of this noise in the digital asset space of, crypto for crypto's sake. It has to be focused on utility, and that's the way that you last several cycles, and that's what gives you the right to be resilient. So I would advise startups to really start with what is the problem I'm solving, and if it doesn't work, it's okay. We move on and find another problem or another way to address it, and we've had to go through several iterations of that ourselves.
Yeah, definitely utility is key, and having resilience to go through all the cycles is very important for startup. And looking specifically at zoom in Southeast Asia, where Thailand, Singapore are here, which market or use case that present the biggest opportunity for cross-border payment in the future, 2 or 3 years?
I'm really excited about the use of stablecoins in payments. I think that we've already seen it's early days, but we've seen that the adoption is there, the demand is there, that globalization of supply chains is possible. You can start to look at, what are the benefits of being in APAC and what are the unique capabilities that we have? Actually, as I look across the countries, there are so many trading hubs, there are so many import and export hubs, Thailand, Hong Kong, Singapore, and the use of stable coins makes the flow of both goods, services, and of funds much, much easier. So I see that as the next frontier for digital payments, to embrace stablecoins in various guises. You can see a world where a multinational entity is able to move funds between its own subsidiaries in a moment. And what does that open up in terms of opportunity? We're often told about enterprises that have missed out on an FX opportunity, or that have missed out on a great deal to acquire something because their infrastructure that they use couldn't move fast enough. And so what we're seeing is the use of stable coins that are available 24 by 7, that can be used to settle on-chain transactions as well. So, all that, the world of tokenization, if it's a tokenized money market fund or a tokenized bond, getting instant access to that 24 by 7 is all possible. And so that's the space that I think stable coins are really exciting for.
Yeah, before we wrap up, so what should our, if in case our audience interest, right? What should be a place where our audience can just go and look at about Ripple's upcoming initiative, partnership, developments, where can people learn more and potentially getting involved?
Well, there are a couple of things. So actually, it's good timing. We have our XRPL summit that's going on June 10th to 12th. That's based here in Singapore. I'm hosting, so everybody is welcome. And that's where, we've talked a little bit about startups. We've talked about use cases. That's really a ground up approach to who's building on the XRP ledger. What are the use cases that, it's not Ripple saying are interesting, but it's what the ecosystem and the community are saying are interesting. So that's a great place to start. Otherwise, come and talk to us because we are a global organization. We're all around the world. Come have a look at our website, see some of the exciting things we're doing with partners like SCB and with others in the region. And we're always happy to share.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fiona. That's been very resourceful. You've been a good partner with Ripple, continue to do so. We have someone in our team at the event as well. So I believe the audience learned a lot about Ripple today and getting inspired. And thank you for all the advice.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to share, and I'm looking forward to meeting your team members soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.